This time on Psychic Investigators. A swimming instructor is found stabbed to death in a quiet Florida town.
Someone couldn't have walked out of it that wasn't covered with blood.
But the case is going nowhere, fast.
There was no physical evidence to arrest him.
Until a psychic claims to see the killer.
It's just a disgusting crime of extreme terror.
But are his visions enough to crack the case?
He says, the killer's nearby, the killer's nearby.
(1977), Boynton Beach, Florida, an hour north of Miami. A quiet coastal town where people escape the troubles of everyday life. Violent crime generally happens someplace else. It's August, and Mae Wentz, a part-time swimming instructor, has run into trouble with her neighbors. Mae, unmarried and living alone, has a habit of leaving her door open for her beloved German Shepherd, Duke.
She would let her dog run loose and it became a problem with the town. And neighbors complaining about dumping garbage cans and so forth.
By August 5th, her neighbors are so fed up, they report the dog. Duke is caught and taken to the pound. Days go by, and neighbors expect to see Mae looking for her dog, but there's no sign of her. Duke has been left stranded. Finally, on Sunday, August 7th, a worried neighbor checks in and smells a strange odor coming from the bedroom and immediately calls the police.
Mae Wentz was lying on the floor next to the bed. She had been stabbed.
Sergeant John DiBattista was the first on the scene.
There was a lot of blood all over the bedroom, on the walls, on the bed, on the floor.
Lieutenant Ed Hillary is the lead investigator in the case.
There were two pieces of a knife at the crime scene. One was the point of the knife, and then one was a broken part of the blade. We never found the handle.
Aside from this, the killer has left little evidence.
We were able to lift several latent fingerprints, but they were subsequently identified as belonging to Mae Wentz.
From the state of decomposition, police determine how long Mae Wentz has been dead.
We had a possible time span of when the crime occurred, and that was 2 to 3 days.
But this only makes things harder for the police. It's the first 48 hours that are the most crucial in any murder investigation, and those hours are gone. Adding to the mystery, nothing in the house seems misplaced, ruling out robbery as a motive. And the autopsy later confirms that there was no sexual assault. Her only enemies, it seems, are feuding neighbors.
We had no reports of cars leaving the area quickly or anything like that, so we had the feeling, with the blood all over the walls, someone couldn't have walked out of it that wasn't covered with blood. If they went any distance, possibly someone would see him. We figured it was somebody nearby.
With little evidence, the detectives have their work cut out for them. The police contact Mae's family in New Jersey with the news.
I was shocked. There were all kinds of questions running through your mind that, you know, what could have happened? Who could have done this?
The very concept that there might be someone out there randomly attacking women is always alarming to the community.
Laura Belgrave covered the story for the local paper.
I think the community felt fear and something of an anxiety for it to be solved. It was a woman brutally murdered in the kind of fashion that in particular scares all women. And because no one knew who the killer was, you have to worry, is there some crazy out there? You know, is this someone who could break into my house? She was just an everyday person.
Over the next few days, the police learned more about the 41-year-old swimming instructor.
Mae was a kind and gentle and quiet person. She had a lot to give to people. She was very active with her swimming lessons. I would go up maybe every few weeks, and we'd go out water skiing or just go down to the beach. It was good times.
As the police dig deeper, the mystery widens.
You ask 10 different people about Mae Wentz, and they'll give you 10 different answers.
She didn't get along very well with neighbors. Not to the extent that, there was altercations or anything like that, but a lot of verbal stuff back and forth. They'd get a lead, and they'd say, this is it, we're gonna, and it would peter out. It was difficult. It could have been anybody.
But two neighbors do stand out from the crowd. Brothers Darris and Jerry Mills both have a long history with local law enforcement. They live directly across the street from Mae Wentz.
They had been involved with Boynton Beach Police Department on several different occasions. Drunken, disorderly, fighting, and things like that.
With no other leads, police decide to check them out. Detective DiBattista conducts a voice stress analysis, a test similar to a lie detector. It measures psychophysiological stress responses in the human voice.
The voice stress analysis that I performed on Jerry, I asked him several questions, and he showed deception, he showed stress on several of the controlled questions. And it was my opinion that he had knowledge of the homicide. As far as Darris Mills goes, he didn't show deception.
Based on the interviews, Detective DiBattista suspects Jerry Mills knows more than he's saying, but his hands are tied.
There was no physical evidence in which to arrest him.
All you got was sort of a floating, well, that week I might have done this or I might have done that. I was drunk, I got in a fight. That's the kind of stuff you'd get from them, but nothing you could pin them down with as to where they were.
Weeks go by, and the Mae Wentz case is slowly going cold. By a strange twist of fate, the National Enquirer is holding a psychic demonstration in Boynton Beach. The chief of police has been invited, but he tells Detective Ed Hillary to go in his place.
I said, you gotta be kidding. I said, you want me to go see a spoon twister? He says, yeah, I want you to go up there for me because I promised him I'd be there.
Before Ed left, I said, Ed, why don't you talk to the psychic? Maybe we can get him to take a look at the Mae Wentz case. Ed wasn't very happy when I asked him about that, using black magic to solve homicides. But we had no physical evidence to go on. It had worked in the past. Let's try it.
At the demonstration, Detective Hillary meets with well-known psychic Phil Jordan and learns he's also deputy sheriff in his hometown of Ithaca, New York.
My psychic insights with police investigation are to perceive impressions about a crime that ordinary investigation has not been able to come up with.
The fact that he had been used to find people that were lost, find bodies, that impressed me.
The detective invites Phil Jordan to the station to look into the case. But will his psychic insights help to solve the brutal murder of Mae Wentz?
She's trying to fight. There's blood spattering all over.
41-year-old Mae Wentz is found stabbed to death in her Boynton Beach, Florida home. 4 weeks have passed. The killer is still at large. With no hard evidence and dwindling leads, detectives turn to psychic Phil Jordan for help.
And I had all the files here to give me. He said, no, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to know anything about the file. Just give me a picture.
As I looked at the picture of Mae Wentz, I began to perceive a lot of different things. I felt her to be a very independent woman. I felt she was a good person, but very much an individual, very much to herself. I see that she's a twin. I see a pink house. I began to sense things about the murder itself. And I see them violently stabbing Mae Wentz.
Phil Jordan is dead right about the way Mae Wentz died.
From not knowing anything about it, told us that she was stabbed. It was pretty amazing.
Even more astounding, Mae did have a twin, her sister Loretta.
The fact that he knew that there was a twin before we did certainly impressed me.
The police are also intrigued at the mention of a pink house.
They took me to the scene of the crime. They told me that this was the house the crime occurred in, and I was taken back a bit because I perceived the house to be pink in color.
As it turns out, the house was pink.
We noticed right away that the house was a different color because the owner of the house had repainted it after it was cleaned up, and I guess he was getting ready to try and rent it or sell it.
I immediately felt I had to go in the house because I believed that's where the crime did occur. I had an eerie feeling about the bedroom. I stood in the doorway and I began to sense things. I see a person. I see him coming into the house. I see that he's wearing a brown uniform. I see Mae Wentz. And I see the crime beginning to be created. She's trying to fight. She was aware of who was doing it. And I see him stabbing her with a knife. Her body's being punctured with that knife. There's blood spattering all over. You actually feel the knife penetrating your own being where it penetrated her being. And then as the chaos continued, I realized that the tip of the knife was broken off. It hit a part of her body or a bone that broke the tip of the knife right off. Then I feel the need to get out of there. Something's drawing me to the outside. The person that committed this crime was close.
Phil walked across the street and he stopped.
It's almost like a suffocating feeling. A fear or paranoia overcomes you.
He says, "My God, the killer's nearby, the killer's nearby."
And he's looking right at the Mills brothers' house. That really got me.
Now I'm becoming a believer because we never told him that the Mills residence was where we had suspects. It was kind of creepy.
The psychic's revelations seem to confirm what the police already suspect, that one of the Mills brothers killed Mae Wentz. But where is the rest of the broken knife?
I immediately asked myself, where would the handle of the knife be? The thing that kept coming to me was under a boat, under a boat. Where is the boat? The boat is where the perpetrator of the crime lives.
John and I both looked in the backyard looking for this boat.
But they find nothing. Phil Jordan returns to New York, leaving the police to figure out the meaning of the brown uniform and the boat.
Driving back in the car, John and I were looking at each other and say, "This guy's on point with things. Let's tell the guys that we possibly should be looking for someone in a brown uniform, maybe a delivery guy. Find out if we can develop any suspects in the area."
Intrigued by the psychic's vision of a boat, the detective has an idea.
John says, "You know what we're going to do? We have to look at those aerial photographs."
As far as aerial photographs, that's a standard operating procedure any homicide for the crime scene investigator to go up and take aerial photographs of the neighborhood. We went back to headquarters. First thing we did is we checked the photographs, and we found a boat.
Phil Jordan was right. There was a boat at the Mills residence. Could this be where the murder weapon was thrown on the night of the crime?
On the day the photographs were taken, that was just shortly after the event. When Phil came, there was no boat behind the house. It had been moved.
Although the police now have evidence that there was a boat, they can't get a search warrant on the word of a psychic.
We had no reason to go on the Mills property because, you know, he needed probable cause, and we had no probable cause.
But now, there's another twist.
Investigation brought to light that Darris Mills worked for a landscaping company that wore brown uniforms.
Is this the brown uniform that Phil Jordan claimed to see? Prompted by the psychic's remarkable visions, Mae Wentz's neighbor, Darris Mills, is now the prime suspect. But without any concrete evidence, how can the police prove he is the killer? A small Florida town is gripped in fear when a swimming instructor is brutally murdered in her home. With the help of psychic Phil Jordan, police now have a prime suspect in their sights, but they can do nothing.
In any murder investigation, you're going to have to be able to tie the victim and the perpetrator together. You got to have some physical evidence or eyewitness or something.
It's very frustrating that you can't make an arrest. When you know deep down that somebody committed the crime.
Sergeant DeBattista and I were particularly bummed out by this because we had a perfect record. It was a thing of pride also for us. And we were working real hard on it. That's the part that hurt, was we wanted to continue that record. We wanted to get this bad guy off the streets, and we just couldn't get it done.
The detectives believe Darris Mills is the killer, but with no proof, the case slowly goes cold.
The investigation continued for several months till everything just sort of ran out. It was looked at less and less and less. Over 3 years, it had petered out to the point where it was a cold case until it just went away. But it didn't go away in our minds, I'll tell you that.
The community really wanted an end and a resolution to the Mae Wentz case. There was a loss that shouldn't have been. And when you go and you see a neighborhood where this has taken place, for example, it's changed somehow. It's almost in the air.
Mae's family continues to pressure the police for answers.
As a family member, you don't want the police to stop. You want them to spend every minute of the day on solving that crime. If this happened again, who would be to blame?
Over the years, psychic Phil Jordan stays in touch with detectives from his home in Ithaca, New York.
Though the investigation is cold, the psychic impressions are the same whether they would be 3 years or 23 years. You become so involved in the case that you actually feel a part of the case. And I was sure that Darris Mills was the person involved with the crime.
But the case gathers dust on the shelf for 3.5 years, until the police unexpectedly catch a break. On March 9th, 1981, Darris Mills is brought in on burglary charges. Police call Phil Jordan to let him know.
When I have a case where we have somebody in custody, I would either do prayers that they would turn themselves in or confess to the crime. That doesn't always have to be verbally done. That can be done just through concentrated effort and thought.
Darris was incarcerated in the county jail. In the middle of the night, he woke up screaming and hollering. The jailer went to him. He says, "I killed a woman in Boynton Beach." He says, "I killed her. I killed Mae Wentz."
Darris Mills tells police that voices in his head urged him to confess to Mae Wentz's murder. On the night of August 3rd, 1977, Darris Mills says he went to Mae's house looking for sex. He claimed they had a one-night stand a few years earlier. Since she always left her door open for the dog, Darris had easy access to the house. He had a knife. He woke her up. They started to fight. Darris choked her and stabbed her until the knife broke. He then fled the house with the handle and threw it in his backyard.
Some of the stuff he said is just tremendous. No question about it. It was on point.
The fact that the knife had been thrown by a boat, and the fact that he knew the gentleman had a brown uniform, he lived in the neighborhood close by. I mean, these weren't things that he was just kind of guessing at.
Darris Mills is convicted on second-degree murder charges. He is later diagnosed with schizophrenia. But could the voices that prompted Darris Mills to confess be something else?
For me, the power of prayer is one of the strongest energies and strongest powers in the world. And I like to believe that that does have strong significance. And I believe in this case it did.
You almost have to believe in psychic power. You know, it really can't be denied.
You know, I'm not going to rule anything out. Apparently it worked.
Some people believe that psychics are fakes or phonies, but I believe that some people do have a gift or a power to be able to foresee things or visualize things.
Whatever prompted Darris to confess, the killer is now behind bars.
Nothing's worse for an investigator than to leave an open case. I was very relieved.
That made us feel good. Bad guy zero. That's the way we felt. Having interfaced with a psychic, I was impressed. As a chief, would I talk to my investigator who's hit the wall? Yeah, I'd tell him to try a psychic.
It works. If they can help you solve a case, I think it's well worth trying.
Mae Wentz's family can finally begin to find closure.
It puts a spot in your heart. You've lost something that's not going to come back, but maybe the process of this being over with can begin.
Grief stops our life. In a tragic death such as Mae Wentz, it's hard to continue from beyond that point, especially if there's unanswered questions.